Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RedSeaPodcast in what perhaps was the most chaotically unpredictable season opener that we could have expected. We talked about it like a week-ish ago when we did the return episode 100, that Asteras would not be the easiest matches as it never is. Correct me if I'm wrong before I pass it over to you. So talk about how you are as well. This is the first time under Mendilibar that we beat Asteras, I think.
I'm not sure. We didn't beat them at all last season. Let me look. I have
No,
it pulled up over here. That's
last season was a loss and a draw,
really
I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I'm more than confident that that's true, but it sounds
yeah.
so wrong,
No, y- y- no. So we
maybe.
no. You're right. We lost to them 1-0 away, and then we drew them 1-1 at home. I didn't realize that. That's crazy.
Yeah, so this is the first time Mendilibar beats Asteras. That's insane. And it came at the expense of a goal that could very well make the Puskas nominations, at least, and very well break the record for the earliest goal of the season for the Greek Super League. So before we get into the chaos that mostly was the last 10 minutes of the game, how are you?
I mean, I couldn't be better now. I'm glad that this is the mood of the show rather than what it would have been if we would have drawn 0-0. But can't complain at this point.
Yeah, the only thing that we can't complain about is our heart rates. Nothing much else, honestly. And given that you you blessed me with a very very good surprise that you'd be on today, imagine how sad I was thinking I'd have to talk about a nil-nil alone at some point.
All our
That
thanks
they
to
can
Yusuf Yazici. I
go.
mean, man,
Yeah.
somebody get that guy the finest bottle of raki in Athens right now. I mean, he deserves something after that.
Something is the bare minimum because God, what a goal! And on his people just completely overlook that for some reason. It's been 300 days since this one has played an official game. It's
Yeah,
been almost a full year since this one has played an official game. And what a way to return for a 20-minute appearance. When did he come on? The 84th, I think.
let me.
83rd, 84th.
Uh,
I'm pretty
he came
sure.
on the 81st, so he played about 15 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, it was the safe bet to bring him on as an impact sub, and I don't think we've seen a better definition of an impact sub, especially when 99.9% of the rest of the team was doing absolutely nothing, especially attackingly. So, God, does he deserve Bragi at the bare goddamn minimum, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the game completely changed once we did start to make some subs. I mean, I would say our only starters who I think really played well were Neponidis, Retsos, and Tsolakis. Obviously, Retsos and Tsolakis not having a whole lot to do, but when they were called upon, they were both very solid. But I mean, the four guys that came on, obviously, we had five subs total, but Bruno didn't have too much of an impact. Muzakitis, Martins, Nascimento, and obviously Yazici. Three of them contributed to a goal. And I think that we looked like a completely different team once they came on. We talked about, on Twitter pretty extensively that this was a pretty poor performance. Obviously, I don't want to go too hard on the team or anybody in specific because it is the first game of the season. Last season, we opened our campaign, I believe it was only 1-0 away to Volos, and it wasn't a pretty game then either. So I more or less expected this sort of performance, but luckily we were able to pull the result out. That's the biggest thing. And having Yazici able to come back and score the way he did, I mentioned that as well. I don't think anybody deserved that more than him after what he went through last season. I mean, he was injured 20 minutes into his debut for the team, out for the year. To come back and get ready like he did in the preseason, and be able to turn off all the noise that's been surrounding him the past week with there being talk of us potentially selling him. I hope that that's completely out the window, because I would love to see him stay with the team this season.
It better be now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could have written a better ending for that, and I'm really glad that he was the one that was able to step up and win the game for us.
Do go check that while I go over the 11 in general. I'm pretty sure that we opened last season off with a draw, and Volos was once again the second game of the season. But do correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not sure at all. I'm pretty sure I saw that on Twitter somewhere that we opened last season with a draw as well. But it's been way too long of a season for me to hold a draw at the opener.
No, so I was actually wrong about the score. We opened the season with a 2-0 win at Volos. Trying to pull it up so I can see who scored. It was Rodine and Masuras against 10-man Volos.
And that was the opener. So whoever I saw mentioning it probably meant that we drew the first game against Asteras, and I got that wrong, which is fair enough, honestly. The thing that I want to start off, because I know that there isn't that much to talk about purely in game, and we'll just skip by some stuff up until we get to the goals and the impact of the subs, like you quickly went over to start off, is that God, do we need another winger? Because Christ, that was nothing on Pneumonides, but I do not expect him to come in and be even Zelson. Yeah, like I am expecting Pneumonides to shine like he did against teams that don't just spam low blocks and then counter attacks and then low blocks and so on and so forth. I'm not expecting Pneumonides to be like 3 men and then find an open pass that more than likely will never be open because everyone is in Asteras' box, right? But at the moment, I'm gonna go a bit back and forth because Zelson is the vocal point of what I'm trying to say here. The moment Zelson came on, you saw more clinical chances. You saw us rely less on the 50 million crosses. I'm pretty sure we had like 34 in the first half. I'm pretty sure we had about that many, which is honestly too many even for us. We saw what I and many others were personally crying for in that first half, and that was more direct attack, which in the first half came only from Rodine, of all people. And that, of course, is nothing to criticize too much because, as you said, yeah, it's the first game of the season, but you also know that we are missing literally the 2 transfers that came in to help with this exact problem. But even as good as we are depth-wise, there will be these games where there is a red, there is an injury. Chiquinho was on a very off day, which was unexpected. El Kabi really wasn't found by anybody, and you don't expect El Kabi to just be the Larabi. El Kabi is better for different reasons. And then you have Varodine that can't cross to save his life, and these 2 sitters, which again, it's a right, but I get that. But you're playing on the wing. You are expected to at least be a bit more clinical. Then you have a debuting Pneumonides who did more than perfectly, in my opinion, in the first half. Perhaps the only one that I have no complaints over other than maybe Costilla, who was Costilla more or less for me doesn't take any fault because he did everything. He was everywhere. I saw him at the 10 at some point. He almost scored. He needed to cover other gaps which limited his own ability. That's my way of seeing it. But you need someone else that can come in and that can break these low blocks. Like whether that's Andinho, Talis, whether that's the Spanish guy that we're apparently very close to, whether that's anyone or anyone, we need at least one more person.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about the crosses, I have the stats pulled up. We had 11 out of 54 accurate crosses. That's a 19% accuracy rate. It was more or less expected that this would be an ugly match, just the way that Asteras play. For their part, I mean, they didn't have 100 accurate passes in their own half. They had 148 for the entire match. They had zero accurate crosses, none, and they had no shots on target. They took 3 in total. Actually, no, they had 1 shot on target. Sorry. You know, when you play a team like that, it's going to be difficult, and it's going to make a lot of these players, especially early on in the season, not look as smooth or as good. I think, like you said, pretty much everyone that started the match going forward, other than maybe Nemonidis and El Kabi, was fine, looked completely out of sorts. And I think part of that, like you said, is that you have so many gaps to cover, and especially going forward rather than in defense, which is usually the opposite problem of what you have when you have 10 guys packed into the box. So I agree that we do need more depth in attack, whether it's a winger, whether it's another 10. You know, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be upset if we brought in a playmaker type. Because, I mean, we saw today with Yazici, for example, he was playing a lot on that wing. And if you can have somebody who can either put a cross into the box, which he had a few nice crosses, or who can thunder cunt it from 30 yards, you'll take that. So I think it'll be good to bring in a couple new faces. I would say for the most part, though, outside of the attack, today I was fine with our depth and with the way that this squad has shaken out. Even, you know, with some of the frustrations in the midfield, I think a lot of that just came down to playing the wrong players together today. I think Mendilibar was a little too pragmatic against a team that we all knew was going to come in and just play for 0-0 from the first minute. So I think a lot of that should work itself out as the season goes on. But I do definitely think we need just a little more in attack, like you said, to bring some impact off the bench. Because, again, you know, with a player like Yazici, you don't know what his health is going to be. I would love for him to be healthy all season. And if that's the case, then we might be fine. But you don't want to rely on that. So I think it'll be good to bring in some reinforcements there, some extra depth. And just it gives you more options in games like this where you just need something off the bench.
It's what we were more or less talking about. That there wasn't, aside that final goddamn decision, whether that was the unsuccessful process, whether that was the missed shots, the missed headers, or anything like that. Everything else was honestly fine, especially defensively. Like I can say, like even from Ortega, who I've openly not been the biggest fan of, he was more than fine today. It seemed like he tired himself out to that goddamn fullest. That's why Bruno had to come on. And it's what I'm pretty sure I messaged you first, and then you messaged me the exact same thing. Up until the final third, it looks like we have even better chemistry than we did last year. But with missing those players that are going to bring you that ability to just, either, as you said, undercount it from God knows how far out, or put in a successful lob for an LKB, or beat 3 men and shoot it themselves. something is just not there. And I am gonna slightly, just slightly disagree on the need of a pure out and out playmaker because with Yazici hopefully staying healthy, with Chiquinho being able to play there, with Capella being able to play there, I'm not necessarily gonna look for with the massive asterisk of Essen not leaving. I'm not necessarily gonna go out and say that we need a midfielder of any uh, of any level, I'd say. I'd more say that we need a winger that can beat his man. I think that's the biggest need of this team right now than a pure just out and out then playmaker like a Chiquinho, like a Yazici, like Abela.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way the team set up, when I say like a playmaker, I agree. I wouldn't necessarily go for a midfielder. When I say that, I think of a player like a Yazici, like a Cabela, who can play across the front line. But I mean, we'll see what happens. Right now, we're in a weird part of the transfer window where it's like we've been told that there's several players who are confirmed, but we don't know if those signings are actually confirmed. Most of them coming from South America, as we saw earlier in the summer with guys like Scipioni. These are incredibly complicated and complex transfers. So we'll see how things shake out as we get close to the end of the window. But to your point, I think we're pretty much there as far as chemistry goes, as far as building out the squad goes. I mean, compare this to last season where we're talking about needing several positions. I think we're comparatively in a much better spot. And it's just going to be some of these new guys in this group figuring out ways to win these sorts of games. Because I think that can be the biggest shock of coming into Greece and playing for a team like Olympiacos is, a lot of these guys, coming from South America, for example, where they do tend to play a more open style, they're probably not going to be used to having to face this basically every week in the league. So I think there'll just be an adjustment period for some of those guys. But, I think for the most part, it's there. I'm not really concerned about the team. I think it's just some of the fine tuning, like we talked about last week with the friendlies. I mean, there were absolutely frustrating aspects of today, and I thought today was a frustrating match. But I don't think there's any reason to be concerned about the direction or how this team is going to be playing in a month.
First of all, God are the South American transfers. Frustrating, really, but with Christ above. And then, I mean, I've been open with the bullshit. I fell for the whole Dallas don't deal thing, which was never there, apparently. I mean, we're still in negotiations, but never there, as it seems. So, if I'm fully honest, I'm just waiting for who's gonna come in this week, because I'm pretty sure that if, not if, when some of these players come in, because those are our main. Like Andinho has been named ever since June, I'm pretty sure. So when these boys come in, I feel like we'll be done. I don't think we'll take it up to the fifth when we have to submit the list. Hopefully we can, because as much as I criticize the club for some stuff, I know that it's not in our hands, especially with moves like this and stuff changes last minute as well. That's why some stuff gets presented as a done deal by me, by anyone else, and just that final little just snaps, and then the deal is completely off, and we have to move on to another target, and so on and so forth. But I feel like the moment that these players come in, we'll see an Olympiacos that's even levels above this. And I feel like we'll see a completely different Olympiacos from last season in the sense that will be way less predictable when facing this. And I don't say predictable in such a bad way, but especially with teams like Asteras, like we talked about, we knew how this was going to go, more or less. And we both were way more hopeful, yes, for sure. but we knew how this was going to go up until a point. And you said playing their own players, and I feel like that's maybe the only thing Mendilibar has not realized about Greece yet is that some games aren't meant to be approached in a modern football way. Like Ese and Dani is a duo that has worked, and that I told you, in my opinion, I think that when you play with a more quote unquote normal team, this is a duo that can work, that has a lot of positive. Again, Asteras, if Ese wants to be here, that's the main thing. But against teams like Asteras, you can't play two like out and out defensive midfielders. That's impossible. It will lead to an even bigger limit to your creativity than you have by the spam of the low blows and the falling down and the feedbacks and everything like that. Even though Danny, honestly, it's what I just added to, even before we started, what I added to the players you mentioned. I was fine with Danny as a pure out and out solo performance today. Like he did what he wanted, he did what he needed, and honestly, for the first time, for us at least, I've seen Danny make so many long passes, long successful passes, and changes of play when no one else was able to for some reason today. Not even like Chiquinho. The only ones that were able to change the play were our fullbacks and Rodinei up front. So he did bring stuff that was needed. Contrary to Ese in the way that Ese seems either rusty, which is the scenario you presented, which is the scenario that I am personally hoping for, or that his mind is elsewhere, which is the scenario that's looming in my mind. But we'll see. But that's a goal though that Mendilibar needs to realize that just can't coexist in the Greek Super League. No, not even in the derbies, like especially now that we have players that complement both Ese and Dani, especially Dani, as we saw, Dani Nascimento is a duo that I would want to see more, honestly, games like this. The last, I'm pretty sure it was 20-ish minutes in addition to extra time, flowed very well with those in the midfield. For as much as some people, for some reason, don't like uh, Nascimento, and especially when you add Musa to that, it just shows that in midfield we have the players that we need to have. It's just a matter of fact of going back to your main point of this game as well. Just a matter of fact of playing the right players against the right teams, especially in this league. But we were unlucky as well. If you can say that we weren't. The offside goal by absolute millimeters, honestly. I mean, unlucky. The matter of fact for Chiquinho, I don't know if that was just unlucky or Chiquinho having a bad game, but I don't know how that didn't go in before Ese picked it up and got himself offside. Sidota stepping into Manuel Neuer against us, like as usual the past few years, and I still can't believe that we had a situation of a 1v1 with Sidotas and El Khabi, and Sidotas came out on top for some reason. And yeah, just a game of absolute chaos. But what do you honestly expect from the Super League at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is like going back to Mendilibar needing to play the right players and have the right approach. It's also just worth realizing, right, that when you play these teams, we're always going to be their pinnacle, right? This is the one game that they're going to mark every year where they're like, if we can get a result here, we're going to party until 2 a.m. afterwards. Look at Zidotas again. I mean, it seems like every goalkeeper we play, outside of the derbies, funny enough, has the game of their life against us. And it really did take 2 goals that were absolutely unbeatable to get through him. And I wouldn't necessarily say that we were too unlucky. Obviously, I think those 2 instances you mentioned were unfortunate. I mean, that Chiquinho shot, I mean, it was inside the post. I mean, I don't think you can fault him at all for that. He couldn't have probably placed it any better. That happens. The El Kabi offsides, I mean, I could have a longer conversation about that. You know, I think that is the stupidest version of the offside rule. You're telling me that his toenail being offside gave him an advantage over the defender? I mean, he had to get the ball after Zidotas made the save, beat 2 defenders, and then score. Was the offside why he scored? No. But, you know, is what it is. I guess that's how we're using VAR nowadays. But I think, again, like as we talked about earlier, we were not direct enough. We were not incisive enough. I mean, even at the end of this match, after we scored 2 goals, we only had 3 shots on target. I mean, out of our 22 shots at goal, that's our pretty pitiful conversion rate. So as much as there were some misfortunes throughout the match, I think part of it was just we were taking this team, I think, way too seriously, for starters. And then a lot of the other efforts were either just very speculative or low quality. I mean, how many times did we have a free kick or just like a wide open shot and it's going into row Z? Thank God there were no supporters today. Otherwise, Rodney would have killed 2 of them. It is what it is. I mean, I think at the end we got the result we deserved because Asteras played so negatively. But, you know, as the season goes on, you know, this sort of performance will start to become more and more unacceptable from the pure standpoint of, you know, you need to be more progressive and you need to be more clinical. I mean, I think that was just our biggest issue today.
I mean, solely speaking for the fact that God, you are Champions League club,
Yeah.
right? You need to be more clinical is a whole different conversation and more direct. The thing that I think at least we need to tackle first is the more direct approach because I'm not necessarily as against as many people are with Mendilibar's crossing attacks because I've more come to terms with it. I think that's the biggest thing, and it's not that I think we have won a goddamn European trophy with that way of attack with players that weren't even his. So in Europe, it will be very interesting in the Champions League, but in Europe, that form of attack works. Here, it will almost never. So there always needs to be, to simplify it way more than it can be, there always needs to be a plan B in the subs, like there was today, but just with a bit more certainty when needed. I think that's the best way to put it because to put it more realistically as well, like you can't expect people to do miracles when you have 11 motherfuckers in front of you, like constantly for the entire 90. Like, okay, you need to cross a lot. We just need to be way more diverse in either going for that cross or at least attempting it. So I feel like that first half would be way more acceptable, eye test wise at least, if we at least attempted a few more goddamn shots on target after a point. Because as I said, that the 34 crosses that was insane. Another person that I think that we missed that deserves a shout because I think he'll help us a lot in games like today as well. And for some reason, as Olympiacos fans tend to do, people don't like him either, and that's Trefeca. For me, he will be absolutely perfect for these types of games. Whether he starts and comes out for Azelson or Pneumonides either side, or he comes in as the impact sub, I think that, going back to my earlier point, I think that he is one of the players that's not necessarily the playmaker type that will help you break that defense in that way, but he is the player that will, using the huge advantage that his body type has, which is short, fast, and strong as fuck, he will be able to do what Danny did in the Greek Super League against this team, and either just attempt to curl it in or just break through like he used to in Italy, because let's not lie to ourselves, as much as the top of the league's quality is sky high, the lower table Italian teams aren't that far play style wise from the mid table teams here. It's a player that knows how to deal with problems like that. That's also something that we need and we have. That's why I'm not gonna criticize the performance nor Mendilibar that much today, because I want to see this team at its full power and depth tackle a team like Asteras, and then I want to just place my final thoughts on if we'll have a cold season or a season where I will probably lose half my head.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think the biggest issue today wasn't necessarily the approach. It was just that once we got into that final third, everything was so pensive and it was so slow and it was a step late. Like it seemed like we were trying to pick out that final pass and just we were trying to wait till that final opening came to beat a player. It's like this team isn't that good, right? These players are not that good. You just need to run at them. You're 10 times better than they are. If you take them on, either you're going to beat them or you know they'll stop you this time, but how much energy are they going to expend on that? I think that's the biggest mentality shift that we need to see in these games. Because again, you know, it really seemed like we just respected this team way too much. I mean, Asteras, they play the way they play for a reason. It's because they're not good enough to play face to face with Olympiacos or with honestly probably half of this league. I mean, they're not the team they were 10 years ago when they were, you know, competing for Europe and things like that. So I think, like you said, having guys like Strefetza, guys like Cabela, I mean, I think that'll make a big difference. And even being able to have some of our depth. I mean, you didn't have Yaremchuk today. I mean, he could make a difference in a match like this coming off the bench. So I think, you know, like you said, it's definitely not worth getting into too much criticism for the fact that we didn't have several key players. But also, I mean, you know, like I said earlier, it's the first match of the season. There's always going to be a bit of an adjustment and a learning curve. As positive as we looked in a lot of these friendlies, they were friendlies. It's a different kind of intensity. And today was also weird because we didn't have fans in the stadium, so that adds another layer of just strangeness to you know, everything that happened. But I think we're for the most part fine, and you know, the quality, despite all of the frustrations today, is clearly already there to a degree because figured it out at the end. Like I said, you know, frustrating performance, but class is permanent, and that definitely showed today.
Class is definitely permanent, and that's solely the reason why I believe we walk the league again. It's Volos next, isn't it? As far as I remember. I'm pretty sure at least it is Volos next. Volos out. Volos away. Because I'm gonna build towards the point of the fans. Because that certainly play I more or less take the fan atmosphere at Tereskakis as a self-evident factor on whether the team does well or not. Like if you recall back to that horror time of the lockdown of the stadiums, which was God knows how many months. I'm not even talking about COVID. I'm talking about the law that happened like a year and a half,
Before
2 years
Mendilibar
ago.
came in.
Yeah. You always see the difference on the fans, way more than you see it in any other stadium in Greece. You always see the difference of the team's performance. So for me, that's more or less self-evident in how players perform and how players adjust after a point as well, because you see a lot of new transfers just being urged on by the by the people that are there on Karaskagi. And the same for the youngsters, like as we started last season, Koustulas, Mouzakidis, season before, someone like Apostolopoulos, Papaganellos, whenever he came on last season. And I feel like that will impact, especially Lemonidis, more than perfectly. Lemonidis, who also has had the taste of the fans, has the entire of the youth league squad. But the new boys like Strafetsa as well. I'm not necessarily going to say veteran like Kabela, but like Strafetsa that hasn't really seen that booming atmosphere in the team, like hopefully the Antonio's of the world that come in. And in general, it's a very hopeful look. The more you analyze it, the more hopeful it gets, because you realize what was missing today. And the reason that I did mention Volos as well, of course, is because I'm pretty sure we have 15,000 tickets. I'm pretty sure we have around 15K at least. Someone do correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but it will, as always, but it will basically be a home game. So it will make up for the loss here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, I would almost say guys like Nemonidis, I mean, he seemed arguably more comfortable today without the fans than a lot of guys. I think part of that might be as well. I mean, you see a different intensity from the academy kids, regardless of the situation. I mean, I thought today, just to speak on him for a moment, I mean, like you said earlier, he's not going to be a guy that we want to rely on too heavily, especially at first. I mean, even last season with guys like Kostulas, with guys like Mozakitis, I mean, they were eased into it more or less, even though they both were asked to play a major role in the team to start the season. I mean, last year in that match against Volos, Babis Kostulas started because we didn't have Ayub Kabi. Um, I think today he looked very positive on both sides of the ball. I mean, there were even a few times where he was tracking back and winning the ball. He won the ball off Makeda towards the end of the first half, which might have been the highlight of the entire half, because that's just how slow things were to start with. I was really impressed by him, and I think he really does have a potential to have a similar sort of season to Ababis Kostulas, to Akristos Mouzakidis. I mean, he really does get involved, and he's almost larger than life in a sense. I would say that's the one way that I think he might stand out a little more than Kostulas or Mouzakidis is, he plays like he's a much bigger, stronger player. I mean, there are even a couple times there in the second half where he's jumping for headers with the center backs, and he's drawing a corner out of it because he has that much presence. So, I thought that he was one of the bright spots today, even though he came out before we were able to go and get the goals. I was very impressed by him.
I mean, you did cover your own point. I was going to say that I don't necessarily think that it's the fact that Remonides was more comfortable without the fans, rather than the fact that he's someone that is that larger than life player, that just pure out and out quality player that can be there no matter the situation, can be there no matter the circumstances that are thrown at him on the field or off of it. And I feel like that's why he stands out, not necessarily just Babis or Musa, because especially Musa, I feel like fits not necessarily that much, perhaps also because he's a midfielder, but I think Musa fits under that category as well. But also, I feel like he just looks a bit more to keep using your phrase, a bit more larger than life than a lot of our more veteran players as well. Like on his bad day, you can see like an Ortega, an Esse, and so on and so forth. I'm just naming examples, not necessarily putting blame on. Just be that step behind, just lose their matches, that extra time. And as you said, Pneumonides was everywhere. He played more like a wing back today than a winger. And as you said, also he did cover the highlight of the first half by completely killing Federico Mageda, which honestly reminded me of that tackle of Babis on Fotis last season, but executed even better because it wasn't honestly half as important, but it was as amazing to watch as that was. But to generalize it a bit before we get into the MVP and stuff, I believe that we'll be surprised by a lot of our youngsters once again, especially now with the B team where players can just flip flop around like Babis had before the season of his debut, like um, like many people have and will do. Like I believe that Angelakis is with the senior squad. I believe that we'll see Alafakis get a chance as well. Like he got the call up last season. I believe we'll see Prekates. And you saw the renewals. That's mainly what shows me the confidence that is being put in everyone. The renewals and the trust in them to be the future of the team. And for example, even the new boys like Kolokotronis, like the kids like that, which Angelakis is as well, of course. So I believe that we're not only building a core for now, but we're still building that constant core that I always bring up for the future. And that I honestly am way more positive about the beating this time than most people than I was last time because it seems like we're using it so much better. We're not using it as a complete trash can for players we don't need. We're using it to ease the kids into more professional football. We're using it to give some veteran guidance to players coming up, as with the signings of Mathieu Valbuena and Dimitris Siovas, which, by the way, it's so insane to see Mathieu Valbuena and Siovas in an Olympiacos again. And I really do hope that what we said last season happens and they both get just a proper run to get that proper goodbye from the team. And in general, it seems, as I said, it seems like way more of a gateway to the first team than a trash can of the first team. So it brings me a lot more positivity than last time, the whole concept in general.
Yeah, and I mean, part of it too is, a lot of the B team players this time around, as compared to previous seasons, a lot more of them are Greek, and a lot more of them are from the academy. I mean, in the past, not that there's anything wrong with finding, wonder kids or prospects abroad, but like it is a lot more beneficial when we are able to source that locally because, like we've said, how many of those guys come in? I mean, we've had some foreigners come through the academy and come through as young players. I mean, you look at guys like an Agibu, for example. I mean, he was a decent player, but there wasn't as much consistency and performance there as you would see from a guy like a Babis Kostulas, like Monidius, like some of the other guys that are going to get to play at the B team this season. I think there is just kind of that sense of playing for your boyhood club or for your local team or for a team in the country that you're from. I think there's just that little bit extra that comes with that being an intangible, and I think it really does have an effect because some of these guys come out and perform, way past their abilities at times, just because of the fact that they're fighting that much more for the shirt.
It's as simple as they know who they're playing for. Whether it is players that love this club, like, for example, that go on and captain it as well, like Thrylos, which is one of the best examples of lives, breathes, and bleeds Olympiacos. Or whether it's someone that is from the country, doesn't necessarily grow up supporting the club, but still gives his all for the club, which is, for me, the best example of that is Tsimikas. It's just the mentality. It's the DNA of the club. And the man that has brought the DNA back better than ever is Mendilibar and Silaidopoulos before he left, and the coaches that are now handpicked by, I'm sure, Silaidopoulos and Mendilibar. And in general, it's so nice to see Olympiacos working like such a well-oiled machine again. It looks like, even if there are a couple of flaws, it looks like we're building not only a solution now, but a solution going forward to make sure those flaws don't show up again. To slowly close it off, because once again we somehow dragged an hour of out of that again. Even though I think both are easy, who's your MVP for the day?
I mean, it's weird to give it to a guy who only played 15 minutes, but I feel like you have to give it to Yazic. I mean, he was, aside from the goal, I thought he was excellent coming on. I mean, I don't think he did anything wrong. I think he added a lot to our attack, and we just looked a lot sharper. I do think there are a few other players that deserve shout-outs. I think, as I mentioned, Panemonides was very good. I would definitely not say he was MVP level, but very solid. I thought Ratsos at the back, Asteras obviously didn't attack very much, but every time they did, it seemed like he was always the one that was putting an end to it right away. But I think you have to give it to Yazic. That one's pretty easy. And then for coach's grade, I would say I would give him a B. I think the starting lineup was probably a C, but I think he made it pretty much every right choice with the subs. So obviously 3 of the 5 subs come in and have a goal contribution. I think that says something about, making the right adjustments as the game goes on. And I think that's one of the things that Mendilibar has been great at since coming here. Even when he does maybe make a mistake like he did today with some of the selections, he's able to rectify it. So I'll give him a B. It wasn't perfect, but, I definitely don't think there's that much to complain about.
You covered me off absolutely perfectly. The only addition to what you said that I could make is that perhaps a shout out for MVP should be given to Ayub as well, even though he wasn't at his best. You can't, and even if one of the goals got nullified by, as we said, the toenail, you can't take away that Ayub is who he is and can score from seemingly nowhere. That's about it. Again, I will never not be impressed by our ability to drag every single detail from every single game. But we'll talk soon, probably within the week, with a lot of stuff planned and coming, and expect player ratings in general tomorrow.
Yep, and Champions League draw on Thursday, so we have that to look forward to even before Rolos.
For sure we'll go. Maybe if timing works out, maybe we can film something.
Yeah,
we'll see.
For sure.
See you all in the next one. However it chaotic.